back, everyone. Our special guest on this week's program is Siobhan Cody, and I want to ask you a question about the economy because while people here on the Northeast Avalon don't feel maybe the effects of the recession like the rest of Canada, it's going to be a very hot topic, I am sure, in Parliament. It's always exciting when members go back to the chamber. What are some of the issues for you?
Well, for me in particular, is the judgment and credibility. I am the critic for Treasury Boards, the shadow cabinet responsible for Treasury Board, which is responsible for the spending of government. And what I'm seeing is the Conservatives are talking a good talk when they talk about the economy, but in actuality, the judgment and credibility of this government is in question. They started before the recession, having spent all the money that we had in our coffers. So when they took over government, they had there was $11 billion surplus, but before the recession hit, all that money had been gone. They increased spending by 20%. That's a lot of money in our country. And they didn't put the money where it necessarily is feeling the impact for you and me or for those in our community. What I'm seeing as well is they've just announced a $16 billion on fighter jets without going to tender. Without going out and seeing, is this a good deal? Am I getting the right price? What are the economic benefits of the country? Nothing. They said they were going to go to tender, the Department of Defense were going to go to tender, and somebody within government, and I asked this question on Monday, who arbitrarily decided that we're not going to tender? I mean, that's pretty serious. I mean, they go to tender if they're going to buy a new desk, and they're not going to tender for $16 billion. They're spending $13 billion on jails. $13 billion on jails for, what the Minister of Treasury Board said was unreported crime. Well, it was unreported. They don't need, we don't know about it. But that's a pretty big purchase in our country when we have we have people that are homeless. And, they spent $1.3 billion on a meeting that was 72 hours long, the G8, G20. Matter of fact, as we go back to Parliament, my committee, the Government Operations, will be investigating some of these expenditures and saying, are we doing the right things in the country here? Are we putting the right emphasis on the right things? And we know we have a $54 billion in debt. But in the next 5 years, this country will have spent over $150 billion debt. So we'll have borrowed $150 billion. Do you know what that means to our coffers every year? Just on the interest on that borrowing alone is $10 billion. Now, can you imagine what we could do with $10 billion in our country? We talked about seniors earlier. We talked about post-secondary education. And if we had that money just on debt servicing, for goodness sakes, it would be a help for our country. So there's a lot on the economic side I don't think that the Conservatives could be boastful of. I mean, we've got a pretty sound economy. I think that's because we had a good banking system going into the recession. But, there are concerns, for North America with regard to where the economy is going. We've got, over 300,000 more unemployed now than we did in 2008. And what are we doing to help these people? What are we doing to find the new jobs? We're replacing full-time permanent jobs with part-time jobs. I mean, these are some of the core economic questions that we have to address in our country.
Michael?
The last few years, governments federally, provincially, have all been spending pretty heavily in stimulus to get through the recession. They've all put themselves heavily into deficit because of it. At what point do you think it's time to shift gears into getting those deficits under control?
Well, I think we have to have a good eye to what government is spending right now. We're spending kind of out of control. When you spend $1.3 billion on a weekend, that's out of control in my opinion. So I think with regard to the stimulus spending, which was incredible for the communities, and we know of a lot of things that have happened in St. John's, South Malpearl, and St. John's and Newfoundland and Labrador, that infrastructure that needed to be developed, and I think it helped stimulate the economy across the country. It's going to end, according to the Conservatives, at the end of March. And we agree that, perhaps by the end of March, we should the spending may be able to stop, but you can't just turn off the taps either. You just can't shut it down. Projects are underway. Projects are occurring. If they're not finished and complete by March 31st, doesn't mean that they're not going to need that money just to get those projects completed. So I think that while we may be slowing down in terms of what we're able to do in our economy, I don't think that March 31st should be arbitrary. There are good projects underway that were agreed to, and the federal government needs to continue with what their commitment was. But I think that so we're going to be holding their feet to the fire on that one a little bit over the next year, because the mayors that I've been speaking with need those projects just to finish up.
We are completely out of time, but I want to thank you very much for coming in today and sharing your thoughts on the first days of the new sitting of Parliament. Thanks again for coming in.
Happy to be here.
And thanks to Michael Connors as well. And that is our program for this week. Thank you so much for watching Issues and Answers. Enjoy the rest of your day.